Everyone, we're broadcasting from the Smart Mobility Summit 2019. Here in Tel Aviv, over 3,000 professionals gathered these days to discuss the news of the smart mobility industry. We're broadcasting from behind the scenes as a part of the EcoMotion community. My name is Katya Rosenauer, and here with me is Asaf Weisbrot, Chief Commercial Officer of Otonomo. Hi, Asaf.
Hi, Katya.
Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Very exciting.
Asaf, I'd like to hear your story about how you got to mobility and to Otonomo, and what are you doing there right now?
So I personally started in mobility when mobility meant mobile phones and mobile networks. So originally for telecommunication. And as things evolved, all the interesting things about mobility moved to the automotive world, and I kind of flocked from mobility of phones and mobile networks to mobility of cars. So in a way, I'm a mobility native. When it's becoming the right moment, you have to sometimes change.
And it's a very right moment from what I understand for Otonomo right now. So could you talk a little bit about what you guys are up to these days?
Well, I think that we are experiencing great success. Luckily, at this point, some of it is already public. We released our relationship with Daimler, with BMW. It's a very important stamp of approval from the industry when those players are selecting us to be their automotive services data platform. Of course, there is more of that, but the automotive industry is extremely cautious, extremely conservative, and we can't release it all. This summer we released another interesting engagement we had with Avis Budget Group that also selected our platform for their automotive data services. And I think after that we got something from a different direction, different sides with when a cloud platform like Azure selected us to be part of their ecosystem and a partner for the automotive industry. So, that's the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of other things happening, but yeah, very successful, very exciting, and we keep on running full pace.
Okay. But what's the nature of your partnerships exactly with those players? So my understanding, you're gathering data from them, anonymize it somehow, and then ship it back to them and all the other industry players. So
Almost.
how does it work?
Almost. I think today most car manufacturers are doing a great job at collecting the data on the car level, gathering the data from the cars on their automotive platforms, and that's I think the place where we are in the game. Their ability to generate value for the drivers from those services is limited to the traditional services they dealt with, and I think it's where Otonomo is in the picture, because what we offer is something outside their walled garden services. It's not only about if they can give emergency services. There is something new happening there. There is always additional services that some startup company is creating, and this startup company needs access to the data, and it's not always easy for them to go and look for every OEM. At the same time, it's not very easy for every car manufacturer to find all the startups in the world. And we are the place where data meets services and generates value for those drivers that can enjoy more affordable insurance that's depending on their behavior, can enjoy on-demand services like on-demand fueling or on-demand charging or on-demand cleaning that makes their life nicer, and of course enjoy better safety and emergency services that are all driven by the data that their car is generating.
So let's see if I understand correctly. So you're working with a lot of data points, right? And you're gathering a lot of data. And then in order for the connected vision to be realized, right, all the cars and all the people in the roads like need to really be connected and understand what the others are doing. So, and you are basically the connector in that sense, and you're enabling them to really benefit from this data.
Yeah, so we are not so much in the place where they are getting connected, but we are an enabler for those pieces of data gathered from their connectivity to be a value for them.
To make sense of like what of the communications.
Exactly. In general, all the data connected by the car industry is very much car-centric. And the data that is required by the applications and services is very much service and driver-centric. And we are in the middle transforming the data from car-centric, built by car engineers, into something that developers can actually use to create the services.
And the services, as you mentioned, like tailored insurance offerings and other solutions.
Fleet
like
management services, electric vehicle charging services, smart parking solutions. And of course, we can also take this data and feed it into smart cities that it can become more efficient, feed it into mapping solutions that could become more accurate, feed it into any kind of emergency systems or safety systems that collect data in order to make the road safer and save lives.
Tell me how far away we are right now from cities to be connected, to be really smart, and like what's your vision for this world?
So it's a good question. I think that when you look at the work we're doing with some of our partners, you can see that some cities are already connected and smart. There's no need to wait for it. I think that we released our relationship with Waker a way back, and Waker already made it available to the world that they're working with the DOT in Nevada, making the roads safer, making the predicting accidents based on statistic models they build on top of the data, making the use of police cars more efficient. So those things are happening, and they're happening all over the world. I wouldn't say this is full maturity and you can find it in every city, but it's definitely something that's already happening in those places where there is enough car data on one side.
And these are places like, can you give me an example?
Yeah, I would say that select parts of Europe and the US are already there using the data cars are generating in their region in order to harvest the benefit of this data, reduce congestion and improve safety. So this is happening. I mentioned Nevada. There are other places that are using car data in order to improve, let's say, to make the cities smarter.
Mm-hmm. And when the market players decide to work with Otonomos, so like what do you think like drives their decisions, and how you guys can make like their life better, and like how you different from the other players in the same domain?
So I think in general, when you look at the decision-making process for the car manufacturers, they're not all the same. Some manufacturers are mass market, some manufacturers are premium cars, and they don't have the same decision process. I would say for some of them, it's a decision that says, I want to drive more value to my driver. And some of them say, I want to make the city smarter, it's more important for my brand. But I think that when they have this desire, at a certain point they realize that doing everything by themselves is not necessarily the most efficient time to market. It's not the most efficient when it comes to technology, it's not the most efficient when it comes to IT, it's also not the most efficient when it comes to commercials. So at the point where they try to assess their reach to the market, and they see that we already have a platform up and running, and they think about time to market, they want to give it a try with someone who has the right depth and maturity. And here we are pretty well known for that part.
Right. And how did the company start exactly? So when was it, and like what was the initial product? Can you talk a little bit about the background? Like what gives you this strength?
So the company is almost 4 years old, and it started more or less with the same product we have now. And I think focus was really, really helpful.
So from the get-go, you had this vision of data.
Absolutely. So it didn't change. Timing was very helpful. I think trying to do it 3 years earlier could have been much more challenging in terms of how ready the market is to share data with a third party and how ready OEMs are to use a third-party platform for sharing data. So focus and timing, luck is always very, very helpful, but nothing replaces hard work. So we started there and we kept on the same track.
And what if talking about the next steps? So what are the challenges ahead of you?
Well, we are not short of challenges. When you try to work with data all over the world today, you have commercial barriers, you have technology barriers, you have
Talent barriers?
compliance barriers. That's on the customer-facing side. Talent barriers obviously are with us always. But there it's also important to maintain a good brand in order to be attractive for a developer, for a business person. So marketing is serving us, our brand is serving us with the customers, with our providers, but also with our talent acquisition process. I think that, I mentioned it's a compliance, it's commercial. To put a dollar value on data is very difficult. To cross GDPR is difficult. And I think that we have challenges there. I think the way we manage those challenges is what makes us unique. And I'll give you an example. Everybody thought that GDPR is going to be very, very risky for our business.
It was for some, I guess.
No, it's risky for everyone, but specifically for us that we're dealing with data, it's very difficult. And I think that we took a proactive approach. We said rather than waiting for everything to happen, we're going to go to the market and on top of our ability to extract value from the data, we would offer compliance supportive system. So when the OEM needs to work with the drivers to achieve consent management, to achieve consent, we would provide a consent management system. When they need to anonymize data, we would provide those systems. We would do the technology investment that would make the barriers to the market easier. So I think here, almost on every front, taking a proactive approach, not maybe a traditional approach, but a proactive approach is really helpful.
So can we say that you are positioning yourself not only as like a technology provider, but also as a trusted advisor in like all the matters related to data? So like GDPR, like it's not an easy thing, to comply to GDPR. So like, can they rely on your guidance?
So they can and they do. All those that I mentioned already made this decision after a very thorough check. I would say that if you look at the process that we went through, it heavily leans on trust. And if you cannot gain the trust of the data provider, you will never get to the data. And doing above and beyond, being able to support them with compliance, supporting systems is something that really helped gain that trust, because they understood that we know the barriers, we understand the limitations, and everybody needs to move fast. So despite being a marketplace for data and an automotive data platform, we were there for them. I think the other thing is that we provide them with an end-to-end solution, not just a technology solution. We provide a platform, which means that we do the contracts on their behalf, we do the commercials on their behalf. So it's a lot more than just a technology solution.
Interesting. So basically, you're really like stretching not stretching the relationships, but you're expanding the nature of relationships. So from like my understanding, technology platforms normally try to kind of make a step back, say like, okay, like we provide you the tools for GDPR compliance. We are not in no way consulting you how to do that. You should be able, like, you should work with your own lawyers and things like that. And you're like taking the opposite approach.
Almost. We are not consulting them. We're not an advisory. We're not going to replace the lawyer. We are giving them the digital tools to enforce whatever policy they have, which is a big challenge on its own. Making those decisions internally of what is our right GDPR policy is one thing. Being able to enforce them digitally is another thing. And we are more on that part of the offering, and rather than doing consulting. But we do it end to end. We go above and beyond. But we also know how to limit, because when some of the OEMs want us to do things that are not telematics data, from manufacturing or build sheets or whatever, we don't do that. So we don't do IoT in smart home. There are many things we don't do. So yes,
focus is really on
exactly. We have to be extremely focused on what types of data we're processing in order to be able to afford to go a little bit further with the platforms we offer.
Very interesting. Asaf, so any like words of wisdom, anything you'd like to share with the community right now? Except for what you've shared already.
I think that looking a little bit into the future, we can expect that data that is affecting car connectivity today tremendously is going to affect the way electric vehicles are launched. It's going to affect the way autonomous driving is managed, and it's going to change the way shared mobility is managed. And those are the futures of automotive. So data is going from only being a tool for enhancing connectivity to being something that's supporting any other automotive strategy. And it's starting to happen today, and it's happening more and more. Let's wait and see. Next year we know if I'm right or wrong.
Next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.